Hey guys, we have a awesome announcement. We have a small group starting January 24th of this month. It is a co-ed 7-week small group starting at 5:30, going into about 7:30. It's going to be meeting at the church, probably in the 220s. It's led by Sophia Gavino. And we're going to be going through a book called When God Writes Your Love Story by Eric and Leslie Ludy. Awesome chance to kind of get to know some more people in the church and just talk about being single and what that means and just how God works with you when you're single. So make sure you check it out. Bye.
Hey guys, my name is Devontae. You guys probably don't know me, but I'm an intern here at CTC, and I'm just excited to be able to share something that kind of God's laid on my heart. Just starting throughout this year in the month of January as we get into this next year is something that's really been on my heart, and it was two main things when I was kind of preparing what I should talk about to you guys this week, and the two things that really came up were sacrifice and faith. And I was like, well, what do those two things really have in common? What needs to be put together with those two things? And what I found kind of connects both of those is trust. And I think a beautiful example of what trust is and how we should trust our God in heaven is in the story of Abraham and Isaac. And a lot of times when we look at the story of Abraham and Isaac, we look at it as God providing for Abraham, which he does. But I think if we can kind of take it from a perspective of Isaac and kind of try and look at it through Isaac's eyes, it'll show us more about how we should live our lives through God. So in Genesis 22, verses 7, starts in verse 7 and will end in verse 8, it says, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, Father. Yes, my son, Abraham replied. We have the fire and the wood, the boy said, but where is the sheep for the burnt offering? God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son, Abraham answered, and the both of them walked on together. You see, I think this is such an overlooked verse because it's not really anything that is powerful or anything that we kind of think really adds to the story, but it adds to the story of trust in the perspective of Isaac. So we see Isaac, if you don't know the story of Abraham and Isaac, what happens is God tells Abraham to go and sacrifice his son, his only son, Isaac. And so Isaac then goes with him to be the sacrifice, but he doesn't know that he's a sacrifice. He thinks that he's just going to do a routine sacrifice and sacrifice a lamb. But that's not what happens. And so halfway through, Isaac's kind of looking around and he's like, I'm confused here because there's no sacrifice and it's just me. And so he talks to his dad and he's like, oh, don't worry, God will provide. And in the same way, I think once we get into life, we kind of are like, well, how is God going to provide? Like, we started this relationship with him and we're walking along the journey and we're going through the motions and we're ready to do this thing. And then we get to a trial or tribulation and we're like, well, how is God going to provide? How is God going to provide? And I think if we would just have the trust that Isaac had in his father when Abraham was like, don't worry, God will provide. If we all could just get that trust just as Christians, as human beings, to just be able to freely and wholly trust God just by him saying, don't worry, I will provide, it'll change our lives. Because I know for myself, I get into moments where I'm like, I don't know how God's going to do this, whether if it's with tuition or just bills piling up or things that are just getting in my life that are pulling me down. And I have no idea how I'm going to pay for things. If I could just be like Isaac and trust in the fact that God will provide, then I think that, just as a whole, all of us, if we could get that kind of, how do I put this? Not like that same mindset that Isaac had to just freely and wholly trust, then our lives will be 10 times better than what they are. It'll become what they should be when we walk with God and trust in the Lord. I hope this was an encouragement to you guys this week, and I really hope and I pray that you guys start to trust in the Lord a little bit more, because I know it's something we all struggle with at times in our lives. So I love you. I'm praying for you. Have a good week.